Ladies and gentlemen, the microphone is about to witness a voice of truth and a voice of logic.
I call it like I said.
This is Durr's news, views, and opinions from the bottom.
No peace! No peace!
Now, coming to the mic, OneDurr.
The nation is in peril. I repeat, ladies and gentlemen, the nation is in peril. Why am I doing this, ladies and gentlemen? I'm not getting paid for this. I'm not receiving any beneficial attention for this. I'm doing this because my reality is as such. Last night, my girlfriend and I, we heard a barrage of gunshots. Just laying there. So many bullets that they could have blocked the moon. So many bullets that they could have blocked the moon. You know, the calibers, they all sounded different, which signaled to me that the individuals had to be shooting at one another. This is my reality. This is Southeast Washington, D.C., ladies and gentlemen. Not the gentrified part, but the part where beyond my windowsill a diabolical energy shades the sun. My windowsill vividly sees the drug exchanges, vividly sees the guns being carried by almost every youth. Barbarism gloats from its victories over fragile minds. So when I cut on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, ABC, NBC, NPR, all the alphabets, blah, 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 the question becomes who represents me within the fourth estate? Because my reality is of a vulgar, murderous, non-privileged one. So when I hear Donald Trump's comments or see his tweets, I don't cringe in my whitey tighties. They don't even compare to the vulgarities that I see on a daily basis. And for those who can manifest honesty, not those who try to build definitive arguments to justify their impieties, but those who can manifest honesty, America is not as moral as people try to paint it. This country has mastered the art of camouflage, ladies and gentlemen. We have become a godless country. But in times of catastrophe, we bear the audacity to hide behind a divine name or presence. Whenever there's a school massacre, think about it. Whenever there's a school massacre or radical Islamic attack, what do? We say, oh, let's bow our heads and let's pray. But then we go right back to fighting over bathrooms and college spaces while our American troops are overseas fighting for us to prosper peacefully. Prosper peacefully. Just for them to come home and to see that they're fighting for people who are at war with the mirror. Just to come home to see that they're fighting for people who are at war with the mirror. Sometimes I wonder if God has moved all his resources to the next planet, and any specks of hope and divinity we encounter are just left behind fragments. Because the scale of right and wrong seems to be tremendously offset, with wrong being the most weighted. The presence of morality in this country is sounding the Amber Alert. It's missing like a disappeared child. Donald Trump doesn't represent me. Barack Obama didn't represent me. Hillary Clinton wouldn't have represented me. Who represents me is the individual with $2 in a dream, a handkerchief and a sandwich, a person who doesn't want to be accepted but respected and given an equal opportunity to blossom. So am I a Democrat? Am I a Republican or independent? Well, I'm not a Democrat. Democrats are an intellectual force who has mastered the art of secrecy and manipulation. To my community, the Dems are an invisible opponent, and one cannot fight, strategize, conspire with, find ways to move forward with those who discreetly inherit gains from keeping the community dormant. I'm not a Republican, because the Republicans don't have the interests of my community at heart. We're just a bargaining chip to them. I'm not an independent because independence typically leans left. I am the party of the pragmatic.
OneDurr.
Welcome back, everybody. This is your host, OneDurr. What you just heard was my opening monologue. And just for a couple of programming notes, this is something new that I'm trying out. A little bit later in the show, I'm going to have 2 interviews that I conducted that I'm going to play for you all. One is with an Iraq veteran, and one is with a young African-American woman who's about to graduate Howard University and will soon become a part of the business world. Where we are now seeing a massive ousting of men due to sexual harassment allegations. Every Sunday, I'm going to be reporting weekly news as I see it, because I have yet to find a centralized news organization due to psychological manipulation and systematic thinking, instead of organizations of self-thought. So I'm just your average Joe with a mic, but it's the average Joe who is the backbone of this country. And don't forget that, ladies and gentlemen, the rich is not going to flip their own burgers or clean their own toilets. So the average Joe is the mechanics of this country. I want to play clip 1 for you all real quick. This demonstrates why I've decided to be a partyless man. No party affiliations. With a belief system in only self. All right, let's play it.
Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi did not show up for our meeting today. I'm not really that surprised. We have a lot of differences. They're weak on crime. They're weak on illegal immigration. They want the illegal folks to come pouring into our border, and a lot of problems are being caused, although we've stopped it to a large extent, as much as you can without the wall, which we're going to get. Before this meeting and before this missile launch, they've been weak on military in terms of spending. Very hard to get for military. They want it for a lot of other things, but the military is always secondary to them. The military, to me, is number one. We won't be here without our powerful military, and we're building it up stronger, bigger, better than ever before, and General Mattis can testify to that. And the other thing, they want tax increases, and we want major tax decreases. So they decided not to show up. They've been all talk and they've been no action. And now it's even worse. Now it's not even talk. So they're not showing up for the meeting.
Ladies and gentlemen, this here is the current state of America, a country of no consensus. The biggest problem in America today is our inability to empathize with the plight of others. Not sympathize, because a person like me, I don't need your sorrow, your hugs, and your kisses. I said empathize, understanding. Now, who's wrong in this situation? Donald Trump or Chuck and Nancy? In my personal opinion, I think Chuck and Nancy. The people of New York and California did not select Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi to have feelings. They elected them to do a job. And that job includes working with the devil himself if they have to in order to push legislative agendas. You can't reach a solution if you're not even at the table. Now, to Chuck's defense, because I want to keep it honest, he said that he would still meet with Republican lawmakers to discuss the issues at hand. But Jesus Christ, where's the fight? If I voted for Chuck or Nancy, I would be pissed that they didn't confront the president. Show some balls, for God's sakes. If they disagree with Trump, then explain your differences to his face. This is what I mean by none of these people represent my reality. It's not like Trump can say to them his 2 favorite words, "You're fired." This is why I can't vote Democrat, ladies and gentlemen. They just want to dance around with compassion. Compassion. While the other half of the country is dancing around with bricks, bottles, and bets. Whatever, man. Let's move on to rapid news. With a 51 to 49 vote, the Senate passed their tax reform bill early Saturday. The House previously passed their version of the bill, and since both the House and the Senate has passed their tax reform bills, which they failed to do with healthcare, this bill will now go into a conference committee where the fate of the law change will take place. No Democrat voted for the bill. There was one Republican, Bob Corker, who opposed the bill as well. Will this tax reform bill help Americans or hurt Americans? Only time will tell, ladies and gentlemen. Silicon Valley struggles to add conservatives to its ranks. Some tech employees say that their politics are unwelcome in an industry dominated by liberals. This summer, the diversity chief of Twitter met employees to discuss whether they felt welcome at work. Among those who said they sometimes feel excluded, according to people familiar with the matter, were conservatives. Ladies and gentlemen, the division continues in this country. Unity is within the distance. Former Lieutenant Army General Michael Flynn pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI. He is now cooperating with Special Counsel Robert Mueller in the Russia probe. A prosecutor said that Flynn spoke to a senior official in the Trump campaign about what to say to Russia's ambassador, Sergei Kislyak. So, ladies and gentlemen, the hunt continues. This investigation seems as if it is not ending with General Michael Flynn. MSNBC Morning Joe calls for Trump cabinet-led coup, inciting that Trump must be removed. See, this is what I mean by a news organization being propagandized, a propaganda machine versus being centralized news. The U.S. sends F-22s to join hundreds of fighters for North Korea war games. 6 of the most advanced American stealth fighter jets arrived in South Korea on Saturday for a new round of war games aimed at North Korea's nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles program, according to local reports. Ladies and gentlemen, is war with North Korea of the inevitable? We will soon see. San Diego opens giant tent to contain hepatitis A outbreak. San Diego on Friday opened the first of 3 industrialized-sized tents to house the homeless as part of the city's effort to contain a hepatitis A outbreak stemming from the harsh conditions people was living in on the streets. What is going on in this country? If you leave it up to the major networks, Trump is the only thing happening.
OneDurr.
Welcome back, everybody. It's your host, OneDurr. It's now time to get into our interviews. Interview number 1 is Sergeant Hall, who has done 3 tours in Iraq. We are now about to get into the interview. Ladies and gentlemen, on the phone, I have Staff Sergeant Hall. He did 3 tours over Iraq in the Army Infantry. So he's an Iraq veteran. So, Sergeant Hall, I'm going to jump right into it. In my line of work, I meet a lot of military personnel. When I meet these folks, I make it my duty to thank them for their service, because I feel like that's the least. I feel like that's the least I can do. You know what I'm saying? Because I recognize and understand their sacrifice. So here's my first question. When you look at the current state of America and the freedoms that they take for granted, how does that make you feel?
It's a depressing moment. It's like once you go to a third world country and you realize what natural living is, living off the earth, helping one another, true loyalty and things of that nature, it kind of sets you back when you come to a privileged place like America, and then you see everybody with their privileges and being able to be warm at night or put the AC on at night when it's hot and things like that in third world countries they can't do. But when you come home, all these privileges, they just take all that for granted and complain about what they don't have. People just forgot about natural living, bro.
So
Understand?
so before we even went on the air, you were just talking to me about a friend of yours who uh committed suicide. So in 2013, the Department of Veteran Affairs did a study that shows 22 veterans a day commit suicide. And do you think that's a contributing factor because of like when like you just stated, when you go over there and you come back and you just see these freedoms taken for granted, does that play a role on the psyche of a soldier?
I think it could have a role in it. I think that the whole just man, ooh, yeah. I think that has a part in it.
All right, cool. All right, next question. What does the words commander in chief mean to you?
Commander in chief.
Which would be the president?
Yeah, the commander in chief is, when you're in the military, that's your boss. You know what I'm saying? And it's kind of different when you a civilian than when you in the military. When I hear the word commander in chief, instantly I think the president. You got to know your chain of command. But
so when you was in the service, when you was in the service, if the commander in chief ever asks an infantry unit or the military as a whole to do something that was not moral, would you have carried it out?
it depends. There's a lot of things that we do that's not that my morals might not say do, but the mission says do it. You know what I mean? It depends. It depends on what's the bigger picture, and what the mission, what the objective is, or whatever.
Because I mean, in today's news, I mean, of course, we all know Donald Trump is president. He receives a lot of resistance. There's a lot of military personnel that says they don't think he's fit to serve office, and certain commands he give they won't adhere to, and things of that nature. But to my understanding, like, he's the commander in chief. So I just feel like if it's not unlawful or immoral, I just always wonder, like, why wouldn't someone?
You right though. You can't. If you're in the military, you can't really just go against the commander in chief like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, just let me give you an example. Bush, when Bush sent us the war in Iraq, it was said that it was because of weapons of mass destruction. We didn't find weapons of mass destruction. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We had to continue mission. And ask me today what was the mission, I couldn't tell you. One thing I can tell you is I operated inside of that mission.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as far as Trump, you know what I mean, he openly says he's not a politician. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When it comes to him being the commander in chief, now that I'm a civilian, I probably could say more, but it's just like he uses no tact. You know what I mean? And that's what the military pretty much is tact. You know what I mean? You got to be tactical in multiple situations and multiple scenarios, and you got to be able to say the right things at the right time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Even though you might be trying to go around your enemy's back, but you got to have tact when you approaching these different types of people. So that's probably the only difference I see from him than another president, is he doesn't use any tact as far as when it comes to being a commander in chief. You know what I'm saying? I think being a commander in chief is different than being a regular president. You got to put on a different hat when you talking to these soldiers.
All right. Let's move on. All right. So let's forget ISIS for a minute. Let's just forget ISIS and the radical Islamic threat. Let's forget that for a second. Our biggest threat right now is North Korea. And when you look at the news, you see that our Navy is having a hard time. Like, the Navy ships is crashing, they're malfunctioning, and with the military cuts from the Obama administration, because Obama cut military spending. Do you think the U.S. is ready for a war with a superpower like China, Russia, Iran, or North Korea?
Yeah, I mean, there ain't no more ready you can get. Ain't nobody ever ready for war. You know what I'm saying? Because the best battle plans are always, probably 99% never go as planned. You know what I mean? It's all about the boots on the ground, if they ready, you know, because, like you said, the vehicles and all these naval aquatic machines or whatever is malfunctioning and all that is because they haven't been used in the way that they use them now. It's like a lot of the military's advances have come from mistakes. You know what I mean? Like they believe in. Well, I ain't gonna say they believe in, but a lot of missions is it's a lot of failure in missions, but that's how they learn and advance with their mission is through failure.
So do you?
It's sad, but
So do you think with Trump asking for more money for the military, do you think that would help with these problems, or?
well, my personal opinion is we spend a large amount of money on changing genders of sex of soldiers. Hey man, we can get money from that.
I agree with you on that one. All right, last question, brother. So a lot of times I turn on the TV, man, and I see, and it's mainly liberals, man. I see they talk about Kim Jong Un as if he's some type of child. They be like, "Oh, Trump needs to tamp down the rhetoric and all these things of that nature." But it's like we've been trying to build a consensus with this country for like 20 years, to my understanding.
Long as they existed.
And
It's a solo country.
I just feel like the guy is. I feel like he's mentally deranged. People say Trump's mentally deranged. I feel like Kim Jong Un is mentally deranged. Like, so do you think like tampering down rhetoric and what you say about him? Do you feel like that works? Like, it's almost confusing to me. You know, people say, "Oh, we need to try diplomatic approaches and things of that nature," but we've been trying that forever, and
Yeah.
and the result of us trying that, the guy has nuclearized weapons now that can potentially hit the U.S. So,
Yeah.
so like, do you think that Trump rhetoric is the right approach? Because like that's all he understands. Like when you
See, that falls back on what I said about tact. You know what I'm saying? He don't have tact. You know.
yeah
Don't get me wrong. I didn't vote for Trump, and I don't believe in some of the things that he does. You know what I'm saying?
yeah
He has made some changes and got a few things rolling. You know, but that's every president.
yeah
You know what I'm saying? But the thing about Trump is that he doesn't have tact. He will go as a commander, as the head of a country. He will go to low points to prove a point for no reason. I feel like if you're that high, you should be able to have a more humble approach to things. But he's just, I don't know. I can't even explain it. I don't know.
so
It all falls back to tact, though.
so
Yeah.
but do you think Kim Jong Un is disturbed by the fact that Trump is irrational? Like with Obama, with George Bush, with Bill Clinton, it's sort of like understood what they would do, what they won't do, how they would do it, how they won't do it. But when you're dealing with a guy like Trump and it's like you don't know what he's going to do,
Yeah.
does that make a maniac pause for a minute and be like, "Oh, like I don't. This guy may strike. Like I don't know what he would do."
Well, you got some people that when they scared of something, they shell up. You got some people that's when they scared of something, they attack.
Cool, man. Well,
I don't think that Kim Jong Un is a lunatic or maniac. I think that I don't know. I don't like a lot of things that happen in America's time of existence. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a lot of things that went on that the civilian populace of America don't know about.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? There's a lot that we ignore as well. You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of wars we started, a lot of conflicts we started. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, he's saying that he wants nuclear power because he don't want to be overthrown because he's surrounded by nuclear powers. He's surrounded by China, Russia, like, and he feeling like he don't have that power that they have.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
He usually used the excuse of what we did to the Middle East, and because those countries didn't have nuclear weapons, that we were able to like Gaddafi and those.
It's a fact, though.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? And, you know, if I was in charge of something, how can you tell me that I couldn't have it if you got it? How can you tell me that you're more important than me? I don't even. It's deep, bro. It's deep. You
But
know what I'm saying? And in my personal opinion, I don't think that by belittling somebody and stupid to their level makes it any better. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right.
It's a lot, bro. It's a lot, and then that also falls on from when you ask me how do I feel as a civilian coming back home. Like, it's just so much when you actually go to war, you actually see what's going on. Like, we can say for days, fucking bomb North Korea, fucking taking apart. Like, we can say all that shit all day. But the people of North Korea that's outside of Pyongyang, that's eating grass and eating rats and catching bugs just to survive.
Yeah,
People that's planting corn using human waste to fertilize it. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
That's what I learned when I went to Iraq. When I went to Iraq, I was fucking. Oh, they gave me a gun. They gave me bullets. Let's go. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
In the middle of my fear, my way of attacking my fear is attacking. You know what I'm saying? If I'm scared of it, I'm gonna fight it. You know what I'm saying? That's the only thing I know. If I have any type of fear of it, I'm gonna fight it. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
But once I got down there and I started mingling with these people and learning their culture and learning them, it became different for me. But that's just me, because I see soldiers that was still gun-ho, still like, nigga, fuck that. I'm out here busting shit. You know what I'm saying? But for me, it was different. It was like, man, this is really living right here. This is biblical almost. You feel me?
yeah,
We on biblical land. Like, it's deep, bro. It's deep. You know what I'm saying? Besides all the fucking fireworks of shock and awe and bombs dropping and you know what I mean? Because that's what the civilians only going to see. The civilians not going to see when you out there walking and you helping these people or these people, this type of people attacking you. They don't know the ins and outs of it, man. War is never good for anybody. Everybody that goes to war loses. No one wins. You know what I'm saying? Only people that win is your government. But the people, you know what I'm saying? The people struggle, bro. And this shit is bad, bro.
I feel you,
That
man.
shit is really bad, bro.
So basically, man, we judge countries based off of their governments versus their people.
Yeah. And it's the Game of Thrones, bro. The world, all of this existence that we know now is based off of conquering, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Yeah, we out of the conquering era, but it's still the might, the power, the feeling of conquering another nation, bro. And it's not that cool to me, bro. Like that shit crazy. You know, you got a whole generation of Iraqis that has nothing. A whole generation of Syrians It has nothing. All their history gone. Everything gone, bro. Like, what about the people? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Who was there for the people? These people had nothing to do with this and that and this and that. We put some of these dictators in position. America, we put some of these guys in position, bro. We helped these guys get to where they was at. We helped them defeat this and that faction. And then they flipped on us.
Yeah.
It's deep, bro. It's deep. It's deep, bro.
All right, Sergeant Hall, man, I appreciate you, man. And if you don't hear from anybody, man, you're gonna hear from me, man. Thank you for your service, man.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
We don't get that much no more. We're real to the next war, man. They gonna forget about us. Flat out.
All right, brother. I appreciate you, man. I'm gonna call you a little bit later, man.
Fascinating interview, everyone. Fascinating interview. As I stated, I love to hear the views and perspectives of others. I am not a systematic thinker. I love to think for myself, hear the views and opinions of other people, and conjure up my own thoughts. Next up, we have Sarah Issa, a young African-American woman who's about to graduate Howard University and venture out into the business/media world, where we are now learning that sexual harassment allegations has become massive. Here's interview number 2. Do you feel that by nature's design, a man is only physically stronger than a woman, but it is man that has distorted the course of nature and presents himself as dominant overall, physically and mentally? Basically, do you feel like it was man who created the notion that he was more powerful than a woman physically and mentally?
Well, I definitely don't think it was a woman who created that notion. I mean, but it's also hard to tell because it's been the norm for so long that I feel like, how do we even know? Because times were different back then. So I would like to think that it was definitely a man and men in general who came up with that whole concept of men being more, I guess you could say, superior to a woman. But even going back to the Bible, which I honestly don't know too much about, but from what I do know, saying that a woman came from like the rib of a man, is that correct?
Yeah.
So I don't know who came up with that. Like, you know, I don't know about all that Bible stuff, but it just sounds like something that a man would make up. Yeah, of course, because I don't think anybody would want to put themselves or their group of people in whatever kind of minority it is as inferior to another group of people. Like, who would want to do that? So I think it would be a man that did create that. But just for the record, I know men physically are usually stronger than women, but you know, I don't like generalizations because I know some women that would beat their man ass. I'm just saying.
I said by nature's design.
I know what you said. I'm just saying.
A man's physique is designed to be somewhat stronger than a woman.
I agree.
All right, so your degree is in media. How does it make you feel being a young woman and now knowing that you're about to pursue a career field in which sexual harassment allegations against men are coming out like every day now, seems like?
Without sounding insensitive to the women that have came out, it doesn't really, I don't know how to say this without sounding insensitive, but it doesn't, it's like I've always known that was a possibility of being an issue. So now that it has gotten all this exposure and people like talking about it, I think that's the difference. People are talking about it now versus whispering about it and just talking within like subgroups. Because I think it's like one of those things that women will talk about amongst each other, but it wouldn't be like a public thing for everybody to know. And people are probably so outraged now because of the figures that are coming out. Like somebody may have known them personally and thought, wow, I didn't think that about this person. Or, you know, we would think that too if it was somebody we knew and we were like, wow, I wouldn't have thought that. But at the same time, I feel like just the whole idea of men being aggressive and thinking that being in powerful positions, that they have some sort of, I don't know what the word is that I'm thinking of.
Do you think this changes the atmosphere? Like, does it empower the woman more now?
Yeah, I think.
Like, does it make the playing field more even now? Because like men,
as far as what, getting ahead?
not necessarily getting ahead, but just being treated equally like a man is going to be more cautious now as of how he.
I don't think it's going to make a man who's stuck in his ways treat a woman equally as far as like sexism goes, like feminism type stuff. But I think that it will make men more cautious of what they do, what they say, how they interact with women in the workplace. Yeah, I do think that. Just because they don't want to get in trouble or they don't want to get caught. Like when we first started seeing like all these different people come out with these allegations, I just thought as many people came out, I know so many more people who have done wrong that are sitting at home watching the news thinking, am I going to be next? Like, it's so many people that have come out, and it's like that's only those who have come out. Like, think about how many women have not come out, or how many people. This is just like one industry. You know what I mean? Like, it's just one industry, and it's something that many women can say that they've experienced. You don't have to be in the limelight or anything like that for this to happen to you. But I don't know. Like I said, I've always known that it's been a thing, just like racism is a thing. Like, people may not talk about it as openly or whatever the case may be, but we know it exists. So I don't think it. I'm glad that it is being talked about now, because it does make the predators more aware that they need to chill the fuck out. But at the same time, I don't think it's really affected me any differently, because I've always been aware of it. So
now, do you think this is a bias? Do you think the allegations is biased? Like, because what I keep wondering is what's going to change the dynamic of the conversation is if a woman becomes accused.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, as of right now, to the public's eye, it's just everyone's asking the question like, what's the next man? Who's the next man?
Right.
But like, do you think that conversation will change if allegations is made against a woman?
Not necessarily, but it will have an impact on how people are viewing it. Because right now, yeah, you're right. People are saying who's the next man that's going to come out. They're not saying who's the next alleged predator. Like, you know what I mean? So they're specifically saying who's the next man as if it could only be one way. I mean, obviously it could be the other way around. But I would feel bad for those men as well, because I feel like people will try to be like, oh, well, they're a man, so they should have this or they should have that, or they should have I just had it, I'm trying to think, or you know, just people always assuming like, what guy doesn't want that? You know, it's just like things that people assume. Whereas with a woman, it's like, well, she was helpless and she didn't want it. Like, it's like people always assume things like that. So I feel like people will probably not take a man as seriously. And it could also be very damaging to a man's like ego as a man to come out and really feel that way, and then people are like, he's soft. Like, men are going to tear him up like that. Women are going to say, he's probably just doing this to get attention from it, like, or whatever. So I don't know. I think it depends on the situation. Like, just like with the women that have come out thus far, and everything hasn't been proven yet. So it's not to say that all of it is false or true. Like, you know, some of it could be true, some of it could not be true. And it could be the same way if a guy or men came out saying the same thing. People would question it also. But I think people are more liable to believe a woman's point of view just because they do look at women as an underdog when it comes to men and women. And this has always been a thing between men and women, where the men have had the upper hand most of the time in like the workplace anyways.
All right. Is Harvey Weinstein a monster or a man who's mentally sick and in need of help? And whichever you classify him as, what is the difference?
I think at this point, I think that he is sick, like he needs help. I think it may have started out as him being a monster, doing wrong, knowing that he was doing wrong, and like feeling like, oh wow, now that I'm in this position, this is something that I can do. Like, and he figured that out in the beginning, and it was wrong because he probably seen other men doing it too, and them probably telling him like, yeah, on some Donald Trump stuff, you can do what you want. Yeah, when they just flock over you, like whatever. So he probably thought it that way in the beginning, And he may have been like a little bit uncomfortable with it at first if it, you know, if it was brand new to him. But I think over time, as you get used to doing something, it becomes a little more natural to you. And we could hear in the interview that he did, not the interview, but when they captured him on tape when it first came out, and the woman was like, "You touched my brush yesterday," and he was like, what did he say? "That's normal for me," or whatever he said. It was along the lines of it was just so normal to him, like.
I mean, that interview, well, that recording did show to me that he was somewhat sick.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So because it came so natural to him, like he didn't have any remorse, and he sounded like he needed help. Like it was disgusting, yeah, but it did sound like something's really wrong with this man if he thinks that this is okay. Like it wasn't like, you know what I mean? Like I feel like if it was early in his career and he just started doing it, he wouldn't have reacted in that type of way. But after all the women that have came out, and I'm sure that wasn't even all of them, he's had enough experience, I'd say, to feel like just way too comfortable in what he's doing, and that obviously took a toll on him mentally. And I do think he honestly needs help. Like, I think he needs help. So he probably started out as a monster. That's probably how people start out doing sick shit like that, and end up being people who like really need help because it becomes their norm.
All right, a lot of men being accused of sexual harassment. It's older men from a different time in America, in which women wasn't as independent as they are now. Women were totally dependent on men back in their era, which made them feel somewhat imperial. How do you think the business world can bring men of old thoughts and values up to speed with a newly progressive world in which women are now independent and are striving to be the boss?
I have two answers, and they're both different. But the first one is, I think that old men, a lot of them, are stuck in their ways. So in some respect, I feel like you can't change them. Like, you know what I mean? They can fake, like, you know, whatever on some professional stuff. But deep down inside, it's the same thing with racism. You know what I mean? Like, some people can tolerate being around black people, but they're not going to, you know what I mean? Like,
but all of them are not predatory. What I'm saying is,
no, you're talking about sexism, right?
Yeah, but men that's older generally talk to women with pet names like, "Hey, sweetie, hey, baby, you look beautiful today," things of that nature. But today, that is being taken as sexual harassment. To even say something out of the way. But how do we bring men of that thought process up to speed? Like, to know that you have to address women in a professional manner, and you can't be like, "Hey, baby, this," and like freely touching. And like, what do you think
I thought you meant more so like with women having their own businesses and taking them seriously as a businesswoman, like sexism and that, like, you know, men thinking that they're the CEOs all the time, a woman can't be in power. That's kind of how I took the question. But I mean, as far as what you asked just now, I would say it's as simple as HR. Like, you know, like certain things are just, you can't do this because then your job is going to be on the line. I feel like if you tell somebody that their position is going to be on the line because of words that you choose to say, then you're going to cut that shit out. But at the same time, as far as like the hierarchy of being in power, in a powerful position, and like men who are older and think, you know, men are supposed to be the ones in power or whatever. Yeah. I think that a lot of them, would be stuck in their ways as older people, and like, no, like I've lived my whole life like this. I'm not going to change it on account of these millennials or these women or whatever they think it is. But then at the same time, I think that men probably a little younger than them who may have been brought up like in those type of traditional ways would change their mind over the dollar. So I feel like if they seen a woman CEO who had a very powerful company that was doing very, very well, and it was a smart business move for them to partner with them, then I feel like they may, you know what I mean, make that type of exception and treat that person as an equal, as a partner, just so they could benefit off of them. But I think if it wasn't as beneficial to them, then they wouldn't really have the incentive to change how they view that person. And I mean, honestly, when people are stuck in their ways, like I said, they could be faking still, like, okay, I'm just going to do this business move, but I still don't view her as equal to me. Just like the same thing with racism. Like, yeah, you can be on my cabinet, but I don't view you as equal to me, or you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right. Well, you seem like you well prepared for for the future and entering this type of business. So I just want to wish you the best of luck and just keep your head up because we see what's going on out there.
I know you'll beat them up for me.
All right, thanks. Once again, you all, this is Sarah Issa, and she's a young, aspiring businesswoman.
Hey.
All right, welcome back, everybody. That concludes today's broadcasting. As I stated, every Sunday I'm going to be reporting the news as I see it from my point of view. I'm going to try to stray away from systematic thinking, taking sides. I'm going to try to keep it as central as possible, as neutral as possible. That is my goal. That is my purpose. That is the reason I'm doing this, because I'm tired of watching international or national news networks that tends to lean left or leans right, and no one leans within the center. It is a way of manipulating the brain, if you ask me. It is a way of becoming a propaganda machine for one party or the other. Thanks for tuning in. This is OneDurr's News.
OneDurr.